On November 13, 2022, the quiet college town of Moscow, Idaho, was just violently thrust into the national spotlight. It was a crime of, well, unimaginable brutality. Four University of Idaho students, Madison Mogen, 21, Kaylee Goncalves, 21, Santa Kernel, 20, and Ethan Chapin, 20, were tragically stabbed to death in their off-campus home. What followed was this incredibly intense, desperate six-week manhunt that, gripped not just the community, but really the entire nation. It culminated, of course, in the arrest of Brian Kohberger at his parents' home all the way over in Pennsylvania. For nearly 3 years, this harrowing case, which had terrified a community really unaccustomed to such violence, it was shrouded in this almost impenetrable veil of secrecy. There was a sweeping gag order, sealed court documents. It kept the public, the media, and most agonizingly, really, the victims' families in this state of profound suspense. Everyone waited, clinging to the hope of a trial that promised a full public accounting of the evidence and maybe, just maybe, an answer to that haunting fundamental question, why? But as we now know, that trial, it never happened. Instead, on July 23, 2025, we reached this crucial inflection point. Brian Kohberger was sentenced, and with that sentencing, an unprecedented torrent of previously suppressed information was finally unleashed. The gag order was lifted, hundreds of pages of police files were unsealed, and those raw, unfiltered victim impact statements delivered live in court. They became public. So our mission in this deep dive is to sift through this deluge of new evidence, to try and understand the emotional weight of those victim statements, and to dissect the intricate legal decisions that shape this outcome. Our goal is to give you, our listener, a comprehensive understanding of what has finally been revealed and, crucially, what still remained agonizingly, infuriatingly unknown.
Yeah, and what's truly illuminating here is understanding how the very conclusion of the criminal case itself became the catalyst for this massive information release. It's a critical mechanism in our justice system, The public's right to know, which was balanced so carefully against protecting the investigation and the defendant's right to a fair trial, well, that balance finally tips decisively towards transparency once the case concludes. The unsealing of those hundreds of pages, the lifting of the gag order. It really did provide the public with its first comprehensive, granular look into the heart of the investigation and, just tragically, into the profound depths of the human toll. And like you said, this isn't just about collecting facts. It's about finally starting to grasp the intricate human and systemic complexities behind such a horrific event. It's the moment a much larger part of the picture could finally emerge.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The sentencing hearing itself marked the formal end of the legal proceedings, a critical moment, right?
Absolutely. Final judgment.
But what was truly striking about that day was how much it was defined not just by the judge's pronouncements, but by what remained devastatingly unsaid. It really underscored this fundamental tension between, legal finality and that relentless, often unfulfilled pursuit of emotional closure for so many people involved. So, July 23, 2025, courtroom packed in Boise. Judge Stephen Hippler delivers the sentence. Kohberger, now 30, ordered to serve 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. 1 for each student he murdered.
Right. 1 for each life.
And on top of that, an additional consecutive 10-year sentence for the burglary charge. There were financial penalties, too, pretty significant, totaling $220,000. That included $50,000 fine per murder, $5,000 civil penalty to each victim's family.
Acknowledging the suffering.
And as a final measure, the court mandated a DNA sample and a right thumbprint, make sure his data is permanently on file.
And the significance of the consecutive nature of those life sentences, that really cannot be overstated.
Right, not concurrent. Run one after the other.
Exactly. And it was a point passionately argued by the prosecutor, Bill Thompson. He emphasized they should run back to back. His rationale was clear: to specifically honor the unique individuality of Madison, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan.
That makes sense.
Judge Hippler unequivocally agreed. He ensured the punishment explicitly reflected 4 distinct lives taken, 4 separate acts of violence, rather than just consolidating them into one overarching penalty, which, you could argue might diminish the singular horror of each murder. This was about recognizing each victim's humanity in the punishment itself.
And Judge Hippler, he wasn't just reading legal text. Before giving the sentence, he delivered this powerful, deeply emotional, really personal rebuke to Kohberger. His voice apparently was choked with emotion at times. He branded Kohberger a faceless coward. He expressed great awe at the strength and courage of the victims' families during their statements. A stark contrast to Kohberger, who was just impassive. The judge's condemnation was absolute. He said Kohberger's grotesque acts of evil have buried and hidden anything that might have been good or intrinsically human about him.
Powerful words.
And the consequence, Hitler said, was that he would be forever removed from civilized society. He also pointedly criticized Kohberger for showing absolutely no remorse, no regret, just highlighting this complete, chilling absence of empathy. It felt like a moral judgment as much as a legal one.
Aligning the court's authority with that public revulsion and the family's pain.
Exactly. The judge's condemnation was total. But throughout all of that, Kohberger remained impassive. His own silence in that moment, maybe the most chilling part. What did that refusal to speak, that stone-faced look, what did it really signify? When Judge Hitler offered Kohberger the right of allocution, that chance for a defendant to speak before sentencing, Kohberger stood up, faced the judge, and just said flatly, "I respectfully decline."
Just like that.
Just like that. Stone-faced, expressionless throughout the whole thing. Showed no reaction as the 4 life sentences were read. Barely made eye contact. And apparently in the gallery, you could hear people audibly disgusted, muttering "coward, surprise, surprise," a wave of disappointment.
Yeah.
People wanted something. He gave nothing.
Well, and his refusal to speak, it feels like it was far more than just passive, right? It seems like a profoundly deliberate act, a final chilling exertion of control in a situation where he had basically no other power left. The central agonizing question for everyone has always been why. He's the only one who knows for sure.
Right.
So his silence becomes this conscious, calculated choice to withhold the one thing that might have offered some measure of, psychological or emotional closure. By refusing to explain, he basically denied the families and the community that resolution they desperately sought. He forces them into this perpetual uncertainty, which is its own kind of torment. And in a really perverse way, this ensures he stays at the center of the mystery he created, makes everyone else keep speculating, trying to fill that void. And it validates what Judge Hitler warned about, didn't it? That focusing on the why would continue to give Mr. Kohberger relevance. We give him agency and we give him power.
Exactly. His silence became his most powerful and maybe his cruelest statement.
A profound testament to his manipulation, really.
That chilling silence. But of course, this whole outcome, including him not speaking, was the direct result of that highly controversial plea agreement, made weeks before any trial could start.
Yeah, this sentencing happened because of that plea agreement stipulated on June 30th, 2025, just weeks before the capital murder trial was supposed to begin. It was Kohberger's defense team that initiated the negotiations, and it led to the deal. He pleaded guilty to all 5 counts, the 4 murders, 1 burglary. In exchange, the prosecution, led by Bill Thompson, agreed to take the death penalty off the table.
Right. No capital punishment. And a really crucial part of this deal, something the prosecution emphasized, was Kohberger explicitly waiving all rights to appeal his conviction and sentence, and his right to seek a sentence reduction.
Designed to be the absolute end of the line, legally.
That was the idea.
And prosecutors Thompson and Hurwitz, they vigorously defended this deal. They framed it as, from their perspective, the best possible outcome. They stressed it provided finality for the community and critically prevented the re-traumatization of the families and surviving witnesses.
Which you can imagine. A long trial, appeals.
Exactly. A grueling capital trial, potentially decades of appeals. Thompson pointed out the defense had already filed dozens of motions. He argued a trial verdict could be tied up for years or decades, just prolonging the agony. He was adamant this deal was secured on the prosecution's terms, not Kohberger's, and it guaranteed their ultimate goal, prison until death. No hope of release. It was, in their view, a guaranteed outcome versus years of uncertainty and potential emotional devastation.
But despite that strong rationale from the prosecution, the plea deal created this deep, really painful schism among the victims' families. It revealed just how complex their grief was, their different needs for justice.
Yeah, that was really apparent.
The Chapin family and Madison Mogen's father, Ben Mogen, they publicly supported it. They expressed relief, said it would let them put this behind us, start healing, avoid more court proceedings. They wanted that swift, certain end.
Closure for them meant finality.
Right. But conversely, the Goncalves family was vehemently opposed, bitterly criticized that you could hear the raw pain and anger. They felt it denied them true justice, robbed them of the chance to hear all the details in a public trial. They even alleged the prosecutor's office didn't consult them properly before presenting the deal. Feelings of betrayal.
And that stark division really highlights a fundamental question, doesn't it? What does justice truly mean, and how does the legal system satisfy its different definitions? From a purely prosecutorial view, 4 consecutive, non-appealable life sentences, that's a legal victory. Maximum incapacitation, 0 risk of overturn. Public safety, letter of the law. But for the Goncalves family, justice was clearly much broader, much more personal. It included that public accounting of facts in a trial, confronting the motive, hearing why this happened.
And the ultimate punishment.
And the ultimate punishment, the death penalty, which they believed was the only fitting consequence. The plea deal, while hitting the state's legal goal, completely thwarted those deep emotional and narrative needs for them. It just demonstrates that justice isn't monolithic. It's deeply personal, often conflicting. And the legal process, even with best intentions, can't always satisfy everyone.
And those profound needs of the families, they were most evident in their powerful, raw words in court, finally made public. You can only imagine the sheer force of emotion in that courtroom. The grief, the fury, finally unleashed after years of silence and waiting. That 2-hour block of victim impact statements. It gave us the most direct, visceral connection to the human cost. And more than just grief, these statements felt like this powerful exercise in narrative control. Families reclaiming their stories.
Back in narrative.
Exactly. Condemning the killer, remembering their loved ones, pushing back against all the speculation that had surrounded the case. It was this chorus of grief and fury, a spectrum of pain and resilience. Let's start with the Goncalves family. Their statements felt like a coordinated rhetorical assault designed to just dismantle Kohberger's persona.
Rejecting the mastermind idea.
Totally. Kaylee's oldest sister, Olivia, addressed him directly, commanded him, "Sit up straight when I talk to you." Then just excoriated him, labeled him pathetic, painfully average, stupid, clumsy, slow, sloppy, weak, dirty. And her final defiant declaration drew this huge ovation. If you hadn't attacked them in their sleep, Kaylee would have kicked your faking ass.
Wow, intense.
Kaylee's father, Steve Goncalves, echoed that contempt, mocked his academic background. "Master's degree. You're a joke. You're a joke of a human being." He zeroed in on the incompetence. You were that careless, that foolish, that stupid to leave your DNA behind.
Hitting him where it hurt.
And Kaylee's mother, Christy, voice trembling with rage and sorrow, branded him an absolute failure, a loser, warned him, "Hell will be waiting for you." Then, in stark contrast, you had the Mogen family. Their statements focused on this immense, enduring love for Madison, the quiet devastation of her loss.
Very different tone.
Completely. Her father, Ben Mogen, described Madison as his only child. The only great thing I ever really did. Just raw, personal grief. Her stepfather, Scott Laramie, and mother, Karen Laramie, spoke about the joy Maddie brought. They made this conscious choice not to waste the words on Kohberger or fall into hatred and bitterness.
Protecting their own peace.
And then, in this moment that apparently stunned the courtroom, Maddie's grandmother, Kim Cheeley, shared memories and then extended sympathy not just to the other families, but to Kohberger's own family.
That's remarkable empathy.
It caused his mother to just sob openly in the gallery. A really powerful, unexpected moment. The Kernodle family offered maybe the most complex response. Xana's aunt, Kim Kernodle, delivered this stunning statement of forgiveness. She clarified it wasn't for him, but for herself, because she no longer could live with that hate in my heart.
For her own healing.
Right. And then she made this direct, heart-wrenching plea to Kohberger, asking him to contact her from prison to explain what happened, to answer her questions about Xana's final moments.
Still seeking answers, even through forgiveness.
Xana's mother, Kara Northington, also spoke of forgiveness through faith, turning him over to the wrath of God. But that was juxtaposed with the raw rage of Xana's stepfather, Randy Davis, who expressed his wish for 5 minutes with him in the woods.
A real spectrum of emotions, even within one family.
Absolutely. And it's worth noting, the Chapin family, who supported the plea deal for closure, their specific impact statements from the hearing weren't detailed in the public reports, a bit of an omission in the coverage. But the impact wasn't just on the families who spoke. It also profoundly affected those who survived that night. The 2 roommates. They carry this immense, unique weight. The statements from Bethany Funker, hers, was read by a friend, which says a lot, and Dylan Mortensen. They offered this harrowing perspective on the aftermath of the burdens they carried.
Yeah, the weight of survival.
Both described severe, ongoing trauma, debilitating panic attacks, constant fear of intruders, inability to sleep. Mortensen described her body reliving everything over and over again, trapped in this loop of fear. Funke conveyed deep regret and guilt for not knowing what had happened and not calling right away, even though logically she knows it wouldn't have changed the outcome. It's just this crushing burden. Their lives shattered too.
And what's particularly fascinating and deeply disturbing here is this idea of a second wave of victimization that Dylan Mortensen especially endured.
Now, so
She detailed being attacked by the public, not just by Kohberger, but by strangers online, inundated with death threats, hateful messages from people creating false narratives about her role that night. The media harassment was relentless, too. Reporters chasing her, invading her privacy while she's trying to grieve and process her own trauma.
that's awful.
It exposes this really dark side effect of horrific crimes in the digital age. When there's an information vacuum, like during the gag order, social media rushes in with speculation, conspiracy theories, and misplaced blame. In this case, the surviving witnesses, who were victims themselves, became targets, publicly condemned for their actions or inaction by people with no real knowledge.
The public flagellation you mentioned?
Exactly. Fueled by misinformation, compounding their trauma, turning private grief into this public ordeal. It's a chilling indictment of the modern true crime ecosystem and its potential for dehumanizing cruelty.
That public speculation definitely filled a void. But now, finally, we have official details from the Moscow police files themselves. So, what does this flood of newly released information actually mean for understanding the case? Hours after sentencing, hundreds of pages of sealed documents, investigative files were released. This was the moment the veil truly lifted. Our first official, detailed look into the investigation, the crime scene, the profile of the man responsible. And the documents reveal this truly chilling picture of escalating unease at the King Road house in the weeks before the murders. These long, sinister shadows on King Road.
Right. Things that maybe seem isolated at the time.
Exactly. Bethany Funk told police about an incident a month before. Kaylee Goncalves saw an unknown man standing on a hill behind their house, just staring at her. It was unsettling enough that Kaylee told everyone, called roommates to see when they'd be home, seeking safety in numbers.
Understandable. Creepy.
And the documents revealed a friend said Kaylee mentioned having a stalker during lunch back in September 2022, a comment that now carries this ominous weight. And then, just 9 days before the murders, November 4th, the roommates found their front door open and loose on its hinges, as if tampered with, forced, a possible intrusion attempt.
Wow. So while investigators haven't officially confirmed a direct link between these specific incidents and Kohberger, their public disclosure now retroactively casts this profound, disturbing pall of premeditation over the crime.
Right. Hindsight is 20/20.
These things, a strange man, talk of a stalker, a damaged door, they get recontextualized as potential warning signs of a predator conducting surveillance and closing in on his targets. Even if we can't prove he did each thing, it creates this undeniable pattern of reconnaissance and increasing boldness around the house before the murders. Suggests the target was selected and observed. Chilling precision.
Those were the shadows. But the files also revealed the horrifying reality of the attack itself, a grim anatomy. The police files contained graphic, first-hand accounts from responding officers, underscoring the sheer brutality. Blood pooled on comforters, covering floors, splattered high on walls. Just a horrifying picture.
Unimaginable.
The evidence indicated Xana Kernodle fought valiantly, extensive defensive wounds. Her room was the site of an intense struggle. Investigators believe she was the only victim awake at the start. Suffered approximately 50 stab wounds, fatal injuries to her lung and heart.
50.
Her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, found nearby extensive wounds. Arterial blood spatter high on a wall nearby, extreme violence. The attacks on the third floor were equally savage, swift. Kaylee Goncalves described as unrecognizable, over 30 stab wounds, many to her face. Madison Mogan found next to her on the bed, massive facial wound, both believed attacked in their sleep. Utterly unaware.
Just horrific details.
The documents also tracked the exhaustive investigation, following dead-end tips about a guy buying a ski mask, checking bar-goers, Uber drivers. Even a Tinder warrant yielded no connection between Kohberger and the victims. Suggests he was a stranger.
So many leads to follow.
But despite those false leads, the cumulative evidence that did lead to the plea deal was overwhelming. Let's dive into those key elements. First, the undeniable smoking gun. DNA evidence. A single male DNA profile on the button snap of a Ka-Bar knife sheath, left right next to Madison Mogan's body. Critical error.
The game changer.
Investigators used genetic genealogy, uploading the profile to public databases, finding relatives, building a family tree. Led them to Kohberger.
Cutting-edge technique.
And they matched it directly using a Q-tip from his family's trash. Irrefutable link to the scene. Most critical piece of physical evidence. Second, cell phone data. His phone pinged near the King Road house at least 23 times in the months before, often late at night, early morning. Established that pattern of pre-attack surveillance, stalking.
Showing clear, repeated interest.
And crucially, His phone was turned off during the time of the murders, between 2:47 a.m. and 4:48 a.m. Strong evidence of trying to conceal his location.
Deliberate attempt to hide.
Phone came back on about 4 hours after the attacks. Solidify the timeline. Third, vehicle surveillance. A white Hyundai Elantra, matching his car, caught on multiple security cameras driving past the home repeatedly that night.
Circling the block.
Seen speeding away shortly after the murders between 4:04 and 4:20 a.m. Visual evidence corroborating the timeline, placing his car there.
And then changing the registration.
Right, changing car registration from Washington to Pennsylvania shortly after. Seen as an attempt to evade detection, distance himself from the vehicle. Very suspicious. Fourth, purchase history. Online shopping records showed he bought a military-style Ka-Bar knife and sheath, matched the brand of the sheath found at the scene, matched the type of weapon the coroner described.
Chillingly specific, linking him to the instrument of death.
And finally, witness testimony. Surviving roommate Dylan Mortensen was expected to testify she saw an intruder. After being woken by noises, opened her door around 4:17 a.m. Saw a figure in black clothes, mask, bushy eyebrows, walking past her towards the sliding glass door.
An eyewitness inside the house, matching his general description during the exact time frame.
Put it all together. It's incredibly compelling.
Yeah.
But what do these documents tell us about the man himself? Especially given his criminology background. The criminologist unmasked.
Yeah, that's a fascinating layer.
The unsealed documents gave this disturbing timeline of his behavior, showed him as simultaneously calculating and, ultimately, deeply flawed. Looking at his pre-murder behavior, a colleague at WSU reported suspicious injuries on him weeks before. A large scratch on his face looked like fingernail marks, wounds on his knuckles, suggesting a struggle.
Physical signs.
Same colleague noted he'd allegedly attempted to use his authority as a TA to inappropriately interact with female students. Concerning pattern there? Then, the night of the attack, his phone browser history. At 12:26 a.m., hours before the murders, he searched for a police scanner website to listen to the Pullman PD's live dispatch.
Monitoring law enforcement as he prepared. Chilling premeditation. Trying to stay one step ahead.
His post-arrest interview behavior was strange, too. When confronted by police in Pennsylvania, he initially made small talk about his doctoral studies, projecting normalcy.
Trying to control the narrative.
Before requesting a lawyer. But even after invoking his right to counsel, he kept talking, asking about his parents, his dog, almost like trying to reassert this mundane reality. Bizarre display. And finally, his jailhouse behavior while awaiting trial. An inmate next door described obsessive-compulsive habits, washing hands dozens of times daily, long showers, orates all night, napping during the day.
Deeply
Other inmates reported strange, aggressive encounters. Verbally provocative, bizarre rituals. Paints a picture of a highly isolated, troubled individual.
So this collection of behaviors, it creates this real contradictory portrait, doesn't it? Fascinating and disturbing. On one hand, his criminology PhD background suggests this sophisticated theoretical understanding of forensics investigation.
Right, he should know better.
And actions like monitoring the scanner, turning off the phone, reports of meticulous cleaning. It points to a calculated effort to commit the perfect crime, to evade capture. He clearly thought he was smarter.
Intellectually superior.
Yet, this calculation, this supposed superiority, was completely undone by the catastrophic and arrogant blunder of leaving the knife sheath bearing his DNA at the scene.
The fatal flaw.
Absolutely. It reframes him, not as a criminal mastermind, which he clearly aspired to be, but as an arrogant and ultimately incompetent killer. His academic knowledge failed him completely in practical execution.
Which lends credence to the Goncalves family's contempt, right? Calling him clumsy, stupid.
Exactly. It validates their assessment. His intellectual arrogance was his downfall. Real-world crime is very different from academic theory.
So from the crime details and the criminal's profile, let's look at the broader aftermath. The ripples continue far beyond the courtroom. The legal case is closed, plea entered, sentence given. But the consequences keep unfolding. For Kohberger, his family, the public grappling with it all, let's look first at life and death in Kuna, Kohberger's imprisonment. Just a day after sentencing, he was transferred to his final home, the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, IMSI, in Kuna.
The end of the road.
Opened in '89, it's the state's only max security prison, explicitly for Idaho's most disruptive and dangerous male residents. A fitting, if grim, destination. And it's known for harsh conditions. Reports, inmate strikes.
Right.
They paint a stark picture. Solitary confinement, often 23 hours a day. Significant delays in medical care. Unsanitary rec areas described as cages with human waste. That's where he'll spend his life.
And former Idaho AG David Leroy speculated that because his case is so high profile, the dangers to him from other inmates, Kohberger will likely be kept in some form of solitary for much, if not all, of his sentence. It's not just punishment, it's management of a volatile, recognizable inmate.
Makes sense.
And here's the final grim irony. MSI also houses Idaho's death row and execution chamber.
Wow.
So Kohberger will spend his life in close physical proximity to the very fate his plea deal was designed to avoid, living perpetually in the shadow of the death penalty, even if he doesn't face it directly. A constant reminder.
And what about his own family? Who stood by him? This case brought about a family's ruin, a public ordeal for the Kohbergers. The sentencing was undeniably a public ordeal for them. Sitting there, hearing the details, his mother, Marianne, and sister Amanda were present, near the defense table, faces etched with strain.
It must have been unbearable.
During the victim impact statements, his mother was seen shuddering, visibly distraught, burying her head in her hands as family spoke. Just raw, heartbreaking pain of a mother caught in this devastating situation.
Between her son's actions and the victim's grief.
But the most telling moment, maybe the most heartbreaking for them, came at the very end. As he was led out to begin his life sentences, Kohberger pointedly ignored his mother and sister.
No glance, no acknowledgement.
Nothing. A cold public dismissal, and a stark contrast to their earlier statement right after his arrest in January 23.
Right, where they expressed condolences but pledged to love and support our son and brother and promote his presumption of innocence.
Since the sentencing. No new public statement from the family, which speaks volumes about the lasting impact, the private agony, maybe a final realization.
The silence is telling.
While his private life unfolds in prison, the public's fascination, it's only grown, leading immediately to this new wave of media, the case on screen, in print, post-sentencing analysis flooding the market.
Eager to fill the void.
The conclusion to the legal case just triggered this rapid-fire wave of media products, the tragedy transitioning into permanent true crime lore. We saw multiple high-profile documentaries right around the plea and sentencing. Peacock's The Idaho Student Murders premiered July 3rd. Never-before-seen interviews with friends, exploring his past, potential motives.
Trying to build that psychological profile.
Then, July 11th, Prime Video's One Night in Idaho, The College Murders. 4 parts, centered on the families. Parents of Ethan Chapin and Madison Mogan participated directly. It also explored theories about motive, including the incel theory, his potential online persona, Papa Roger, trying to connect those dots.
That incel theory really seemed to gain traction.
Yeah, and beyond the screen, the highly anticipated book, The Idaho 4, an American tragedy by James Patterson and Vicki Ward, released July 14th. Based on over 300 interviews, promised new revelations, the clearest profile yet, also touching on the incel theory.
Showing how that theory captured the public imagination, trying to find the why.
And of course, podcasts jumped right in. Major outlets like 48 Hours dedicated episodes to the sentencing. Legal analysts, journalists reflecting on the emotional day. The public struggle with that unknowable why.
A question the legal system just couldn't answer.
Exactly.
And the rapid-fire release of all these polished media products, it really illustrates something significant, doesn't it? Why this explosion of content right now?
Well, the legal system, constrained by evidence rules, stymied by the plea deal and Kohberger's silence, it fundamentally failed to provide that complete, satisfying narrative the public craved.
The narrative vacuum.
Precisely. That absence of motive, a full trial, a definitive explanation, it created this huge market opportunity. Media creators rushed to fill it, offering theories, humanizing victims, reanalyzing evidence. They're now actively shaping the public's long-term memory and understanding. They are, in a real sense, effectively writing the final chapters of a story that the courtroom left unfinished, providing speculative closure the justice system couldn't.
It's a powerful example of true crime media stepping in, shaping public perception profoundly.
Speaking of the unfinished story, despite the finality of the sentence, the flood of new info, the case concludes with this profound unanswered question at its core. And like we discussed, there are still subtle legal complexities challenging that idea of absolute closure. The single biggest unknown, the void at the center, is Brian Kohberger's motive. After years of investigation, countless hours, law enforcement publicly admits they never found a single connection between him and any of the 4 victims or the 2 surviving roommates. He was a complete stranger.
Which makes it so uniquely unsettling, a senseless act without apparent cause.
Right.
And what's fascinating is how key figures, like the judge and prosecutor, argued for moving away from that question, dismissing the why. Judge Hippler warned focusing on it gives Kohberger the power and relevance he seems to crave. Validates his silence.
Lets him manipulate from behind bars.
Prosecutor Thompson said Kohberger would never be a reliable source for the truth anyway. Any explanation would be self-serving. Giving him a platform would be a disservice. Demanding motive in the plea, futile.
Yet, despite that official stance.
Despite that, the lack of a known motive remains the case's most haunting and defining feature. It continues to fuel intense public and media fascination because it challenges our basic need to understand evil. How do we as a society process such brutality when the motivation is a complete agonizing void? It defies our logical frameworks.
And there's that other subtle legal complexity, challenging the idea of absolute closure, the potential for appeal, the illusion of finality. A cornerstone of the prosecution's argument for the plea deal was that finality it promised. Based on Kohberger waiving his appeal rights, the agreement said he knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently waives all rights to appeal.
Seemed like a clear end. Much needed closure.
On the surface, yes.
However, here's that crucial legal nuance, that asterisk. Even when a defendant signs away appeal rights, a Supreme Court decision, Garza v. Idaho, says their lawyer is still constitutionally obligated to file a notice of appeal if the defendant requests it.
So the door isn't completely shut.
Not entirely. While an appeal would be incredibly difficult for him to win and could even backfire spectacularly, maybe letting the state void the plea, reinstate the death penalty possibility. The fundamental right to initiate one isn't eliminated by the waiver. The judge explicitly informed Kohberger of this right during sentencing, despite the waiver, so the possibility of him filing still exists.
Wow. So the finality isn't absolute.
Exactly. It introduces this significant asterisk to that narrative. The plea was presented as a guarantee. No more court dates, no protracted appeals. Judge Hippler's clarification, legally necessary, shows that guarantee isn't absolute. Any appeal would be legally perilous for Kohberger, almost certain to fail, could void the deal, but the possibility remains. It demonstrates how even in seemingly closed cases, the intricate machinery of justice, protecting constitutional rights, can create potential avenues. Leaves a small but significant question mark, challenges that simple case closed narrative.
This deep dive has really shown us how that torrent of information after sentencing, paradoxically, served to both clarify and in some ways further obscure the full story. We now have this granular forensic understanding of the how, the investigation, the DNA, the cell pings, and the profound human toll in those heartbreaking victim impact statements.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, this mountain of new detail only casts a harsher, more glaring light on that central, unknowable void where a motive should be. The absence of the why. It remains the case's most defining, haunting feature, the question echoing loudest despite all the facts. A mystery the legal system just couldn't solve.
The legal system delivered swift punishment through the plea deal. Life behind bars guaranteed. But in doing so, it bypassed that public trial that might have unearthed more answers, or at least provided a more complete public narrative, leaving the community with this story that's forensically detailed, but motivationally blank.
Which raises that important question for you, our listener. The case is legally closed. Verdict delivered, sentence imposed. But how do we truly find peace or understanding when the most fundamental question, the why, remains so profoundly unanswered? What does this mean for our collective pursuit of closure in such profound tragedies when that central piece is forever missing? Living a void facts alone can't fill.
The legacy of this case, it's one of immeasurable pain, a chilling study in calculated but ultimately flawed evil, perpetrated by a man whose academic interest in criminology was just grotesquely overshadowed by his own criminal incompetence. And finally, it's a stark, enduring reminder. Even when the justice system achieves its own resolution, a confession, conviction, life sentence, it cannot always fill the empty space left by truly senseless tragedy. The questions it raised will likely echo for years to come, haunting whisper of the unknown.